gentleness, it's about acceptance, it's about love. And I think I guess I'm a community worker at heart, and it's home for me, and especially community culture work is really home. And because it really is about love, and it's putting some love back in the world and making spaces for people who've been shafted, who've been pushed into the shadows, who've been marginalised, who've been excluded. And I think the work that we do is in the little spaces, and work in the little spaces is the most important work, because that's where the real change happens. I gave up years ago trying to change the world. It was so exhausting, and it's just not going to happen. So I decided the little spaces, if someone changes the way they treat someone on the bus, or someone opens up their heart to someone because they've heard their story, that's enough for me these days, because people only can change themselves. I can't change anyone. So the work that we do really is about making spaces, nurturing spaces, safe spaces, spaces that sing, spaces where poetry can live and breathe, and spaces where we can actually, we don't all have to get on, but for me, underpinning all that is respect. And I guess in the last 5 years, my work with, around human rights and the Human Rights Commission, always my work with outreach at TAFE. I love outreach, that's home at TAFE. TAFE is a very important institution. Public education I'll always fight for. But, you know, education, it underpins all community culture work. There's always learning. And I think sometimes we lose sight that community culture work is where real change happens. I've seen so many leaders emerge over the last 25 years. I've seen the most beautiful plays and films. I've listened to the most beautiful music and poetry. The stories in many of those times have been very sad. I've worked a lot with refugees and asylum seekers more recently, and migrants and women and people with lived experiences in mental health. And there's an epic of sad stories, but telling story is healing. And in the old days, the storytellers were the healers, and the healers were the storytellers, because they had everyone's story. And I think everyone should be involved in community culture work. I think everyone is about participating. I guess it's our right, a cultural right. It's part of who we are, and I want to recognise the community partnerships part of the Australia Council. They've always been very supportive of the work we do. They've been very supportive of Western Sydney, and I think Western Sydney is the centre of the universe, because everyone is there. And the best stories, the most cutting edge work is happening in Western Sydney, let me assure you. So I'm going to finish with a little quote, a little poem. But thank you everybody for coming, especially my family and friends and colleagues. And I'd like to actually thank Bankstown Area Multicultural Network for supporting me all these years, Information and Cultural Exchange for supporting me all these years, and letting me run with projects that at times were chancy projects, and Auburn Community Development Network for supporting me all these years. You know, you don't work alone, you always work collaboratively, and I am part of the community sector, and the community sector is part of me. It's my home. I want to leave you with a little verse from the dearly departed Seamus Heaney. And this poem is for this week, because I think it's going to be a tough week. Seamus writes, "History says, don't hope on this side of the grave, but then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice can rise up, and hope and history rhyme." So thank you.